A very warm welcome to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 12. I'm Ritwika Gupta. Tonight we are deep diving into the commercial real estate sector in India. What are the biggest trends, opportunities for smaller businesses, and an outlook for the coming year? All that and more, I'll be in conversation with Vinod Rohira, MD and CEO Commercial Real Estate, Raheja Corp. Vinod, thank you so much for joining us today on ET Now Leaders of Tomorrow. It's a pleasure chatting with you today.
Thank you so much for taking time out to meet with us, especially in our newly finished asset, Altimus. Yes. Great to have you here.
It's absolutely lovely, and I want to begin this interview with a macro perspective, an overview of the commercial real estate sector in India. Tell me, what according to you are the biggest growth drivers for this industry?
Oh, there are plenty of growth drivers. India is at a position where we are past COVID. Mm-hmm. India has demonstrated to the world how resilient it has been, especially in delivering high-end tech services, which was actually the heartbeat for global companies, especially during COVID. Yeah. And that test has actually put India right on top to say that, no, this is a country which can give you top-end services at a very cost-effective platform with far greater talent than anywhere else in the world put together. What that has done is now globally companies have understood that what they were thinking of India as short term is no longer short term. I think it is front and center. So that's one part of India which translates to commercial footprint, which is really tech companies that are occupying. Having said that, the other silent beast that's really growing is domestic India, which up till now people were not giving that spotlight purely because a large volume of commercial real estate is being focused on tech companies. Okay. I think the next 5 years will belong equally to India's enterprises that are growing and are screaming to be seen and heard in the right places. Mm-hmm. They are attracting top talent. They want to become global companies. They're addressing global markets. They want to be in the prime marketplace with the prime talent. And so they are front runners for grade A office space. Those are also pushing the demand curve back up compared to just only tech demand that was happening.
Right. And from what I understand, businesses in this sector, they're like transitioning, from your physical retail, traditional way of functioning to a more, I would say, experimental formats, right? Could you share a few examples with us for that?
So it's like this. I mean, workspace dynamics have got proven that you need to be together. You need to collectively apply your mind, especially when you're moving towards growth. So then whether it is a startup enterprise or whether it is an enterprise that wants to move from good to great, wants to bring in new technology for manufacturing, development, asset creation, all of those are now attracting top talent. Okay. And that top talent is really the young Indian who's technically on a backpack. He's no longer an Indian who doesn't want to migrate. He's available to move any part of the country wherever there's a job opportunity and there's a quality of life. So when he's getting both of these, he's moving. And talent is so mobile, and talent doesn't want to compromise. They want to be in the best space with the best employer. Sure. All of that dynamic is really changing the landscape really fast.
Right. And what opportunities do you see for smaller businesses in this sector? How do you view their role in the commercial real estate sector in India?
I think you always start somewhere small and then you start to grow and then you start to become great. So all those are now really visible. You've seen the amount of startups that India had. Yeah. You saw the hiccups in some startups, which is great because cleanup is important. Yes. The more robust your business model is, the more stronger you will grow. The stronger you grow, the more visible you will become. And you're seeing the smaller companies now becoming medium-sized companies, changing their game, changing the talent pool, wanting to be relevant, wanting to be seen. So you will see them very strongly integrate with the footprint of where Indian and global companies will, I think, compete together.
Right. India's GDP is set to, all set to surpass Japan and Germany's, right? In that light, I want to understand, how will this have an, implication on the commercial real estate sector? Where do you think are the biggest opportunities, as far as you can say?
I think GDP growth and India becoming amongst the largest economies in the world is inevitable, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. That journey is going to see its path. Having said that, for India, of course, it means a lot of things. At the pace at which infrastructure is being developed, wherever you will find quadrants where infrastructure backbones are very strong, the economic activity in those micro markets will see a major boost.
Sure.
Driven by that boost, you will see quality development, whether it's residential, social, commercial, infrastructure, name it what you want. They will all become a cluster and a magnet to that infrastructure.
Okay.
And those ecosystems will really grow to global scales. So you will have a few global cities in India in 10 years from today. And in those global cities, you will find most of the growing India and the global footprint merging together to participate and become visible in those markets.
Right, and just extending that thought, then tell me, where does India stand, as far as the commercial real estate sector is concerned? Globally, would you say we are a front runner? If not, where are we lacking, and what needs to be done?
I mean, you can't compare India as an ecosystem to an established market ecosystem, whether it's America or it's Europe or Japan. Volume-wise, some countries are way ahead in terms of commercial footprint. Europe is not as big in volume, but of course the profile of occupier, the rents per square foot, and all of that can't match. India is on an average $1 a square foot rental, right? Now if you step back and say $1 a square foot rental for the tech footprint, which is 80-90%, CBD assets like these are getting their due and respect now because global companies are looking at India for growth, where they are willing to pay between $4, $5, $6 a square foot and more per month. But leaving aside that, 90% of the volume of real estate is $1 a square foot plus, right? But when you look at the assets, whether it's the sustainability protocols, whether it is the infrastructure, the support services, they are grade A++ compared to anywhere else in the world.
Sure.
This I'm talking of the grade A++ developers, and that's supply, which is probably less than 30 or 40% of the cumulative supply which is coming, right? So everything that's getting built grade A is equal or par to anywhere else in the world, but on the rental scale, it's far lower than anything else. So as the country grows and as the attention for participating in India grows, you will see values move up because rents have not been a criteria at all. It was just because you were not attracting the right level of jobs and the right level of enterprises. Once that is now coming through, rent is incidental. Your cost is 3.5% of rent on your cumulative operating costs. It doesn't really matter. So you will be willing to pay much more if you can get top talent to come and work in those assets. So I think India is well poised. Going forward, next 5 years are crucial. Whatever gets built to global and future standards, even though it may be cost heavy, is the only way to go. You can't compromise on assets and you can't compromise on the experience. And if you combine both these, you're a winner.
It's time for a quick break here. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 12. We are putting the spotlight on India's commercial real estate sector. We're in conversation with Vinod Rohira, MD and CEO Commercial Real Estate, Raheja Corp. Now, Vinod, tell me, at Raheja, what has been your strategy, your growth strategy? If you can talk to us about some of the initiatives, what can you tell us?
So I think we've constantly been very, very sensitive to what our consumers have wanted. In a great way, the enterprise has been shaped by what our clients have asked us to be, right? And each time we've signed up with the top global companies out of 170, 80 odd companies that occupy between 30 and 40 million square feet of our footprint across of India.
Yeah.
Most of these are global 100 and global 500 companies.
Okay.
So a lot of times we have learned from their global footprints, learned from what they're looking at, and because these are global companies and they're looking at a 10-year horizon of rental, 10 years later they will walk away. So you're constantly trying to upgrade assets, manage assets, upgrade the experience, build on the sustainability protocol so that you're ahead of the game. Because you know that you don't want to lose that client. To us, credit risk is about the best clients.
Sure.
Right? So if we want to retain that cumulative strength of client enterprise and relationships, we have only focused on doing that. So I think that's why we probably, I can say confidently, we are way ahead of the curve. Every new asset we build, we change benchmarks, and we don't stop there. We go backwards and correct all of our assets from the first building to the last building to align themselves to look and feel the same way. I think there is a lot of opportunity to build in India.
Yeah.
It is a consolidated footprint space because you need serious amount of capital, and you need to be patient. You need to build and get the right tenant, and you got to get your rents over 6, 7, 8, 9 years
Yeah.
to start getting your returns. In that scenario, not too many people are willing to put patient capital.
Sure.
And the minute you break those assets and you sell them off or you create strata title, you have lost the control over that asset and you've lost the quality of tenants. So commercial real estate is not straightforward. You might build a residential building, good, bad, ugly, the views may not be okay, the size may be smaller, you'll sell off at some end at a discount. This is a double-edged sword, 0 or 1. You build the asset right, you'll get the right tenants, you'll get the right experience, you'll get everything else. Otherwise, you'll be struggling. And that's why you're seeing a whole bunch of vacancies in multiple marketplaces that are not finding customers. And at the same time, grade A++ assets are getting lapped away. And that's how the story is going to pan out.
Right. You spoke about sustainability and even technology for that matter. It is impacting industries across the board. I want to understand what are some of the biggest trends that you are excited about in this sector, or which you think will really impact the commercial real estate sector in the coming years.
I think every aspect, you have to understand who your changing dynamics of your customer is. Every 5 years, the envelope is shifting, right? You can't build and say, today I start the building, in 5 years I'm obsolete.
Okay.
So you have to constantly be in touch on a daily basis with what your customers are asking you. And the customer is not the decision maker alone. It is everyone who's walking in and out. You might have a 30% attrition in your company. So you've changed and churned your employees 1/3 in a year. The new employee who's coming in, you don't know what he wants. And that's your customer. So if you're understanding those people, you know how the product is and the dynamics are changing. If you constantly go on providing, you will make sure you're ahead of the curve. We are engaging constantly with the employees, either with entertainment, with recreation activities, with audits, with feedback mechanisms, with meetings, with a whole lot of bunch of activities where they integrate. Right? So they look forward to the workspace as something that is beyond of their desk and the job that's given to them.
Sure.
And for them, it's an extension of their home. Mind you, the average age is 27 to 29. They're all bachelors who are spending most part of their awake time in a day at the workspace. They're pampered, right from the coffee in the morning to breakfast, to lunch, to dinner, to evening snacks, and all the other recreation, entertainment, socializing, merging with their colleagues, networking. You're creating the silent space and the infrastructure for them to thrive. And that really makes a difference. And that is really what you're building. It's not the asset that is just standing there.
No, absolutely, I agree. Whenever I've spoken to some of the leading real estate developers in this country, they have highlighted the need for skilling and upskilling. What's your take on that?
I think it's a constant exercise. I mean, if you're going to grow from a 4 trillion to an 8-10 trillion economy, and you have a young talent force, you have to skill and reskill and then reskill to keep pushing the envelope. What has happened is what you built in the last 30 years, or what the nation built in the last 30 years, you will do in the next 7 years. You had 30 years to make mistakes. You can't make them in 5 or 7 years because there'll be a humongous shift in the infrastructure. Good, bad, ugly, you have to live with it.
That's right.
So you have to correct as you go at a very fast pace, which is why skilling, reskilling is a very constant activity. You can't say, this is what I decided and next we'll change 2 years later. You'll be rethinking on the drawing board in 2 months.
Right.
So that's really what you need to work for.
And how do you view technology?
So technology can either be disruptive or it can be a complete enabler, right? You have to find the benefit that technology brings on the table so that your decisions are far more refined, far more faster, far more accurate, far more dense. So I think technology is a phenomenal support driver, and India being the backbone of technology, you can afford to engage in technology at a far lower cost than anywhere else in the world. So I think we're in a fortunate spot where we can access top talent at reasonable costs and do trial and error quickly to bring in technology interfaces to make better buildings, better services, better recreation, monitoring, algorithms to check what's working, not working, how can you change stuff in terms of sustainability, mapping all of those protocols. It's a phenomenal opportunity.
All right, and how are you using technology at Raheja?
We're using it at every stage, whether it is mapping construction, mapping costs, mapping infrastructure, mapping client movements, mapping cumulatively how the schedules are going. Everything is actually mapped. We have a dashboard. We see everything on that dashboard from start to end of project, knowing exactly where everything is moving, how the marketplace is moving, how customers are moving, what's happening globally, everything.
Right. Just before the interview, we were just talking about how, we had work from home, during the COVID years, basically. And right now, everybody has, of course, moved back. Given how things are changing, and given how dynamic the ecosystem is, right? What is your take on, some of these co-working spaces, some of, the work from home concepts, how do you think that aligns with what you're doing?
So globally, because you've been dealing with global companies, work from home was there much before COVID. There were top clients that were 2 days in a week working from home.
Yeah.
But what we don't understand about India is that India was primarily the support backbone. Now it's become the heartbeat of the support background.
Sure.
That talent is coming to office to learn and be engaged with customers. So while you were working remotely because you didn't have an option, I don't think India would probably go on that path, and we've seen that in the last 18 months from a 10% footprint in the office, it's a 80% footprint back in the office, right? You will still have a healthy combination, which is great because you can have bench strength, you can have more talent, which you don't have office space for, allows for growth, allows for slower trajectory of making sure you don't make knee-jerk decisions. It's great. And what that does also is you may be able to access cheaper talent who's not willing to migrate, which again can then cumulatively grow in the knowledge bank and then move to cities and take better jobs. So it's great for India. So having said that, work from home, very happy about what happened. It's a new revised 2.0 India, which is now understanding workspace far better. Right?
So as a leading realtor, tell me what sort of support would you like to see from policymakers or the government in terms of really empowering this industry?
So I think commercial real estate, so to speak, in terms of the number of developers, is less than 2-3% of the cumulative developer footprint. And commercial real estate is not at that volume of residential real estate across of India. So it doesn't get that volume of attention. But at the same time, governments have understood that these are incubators of employment. So they want to enable as much as the infrastructure that they can and create the support last mile to make sure that ecosystems thrive with jobs and global companies find it conducive to come and attract talent in India. It's like saying that China is the manufacturing leader of the world. It may be right to say that India is a technology footprint support provider to the world. And that's a given. So India has understood that. If you just take conservative estimates of NASSCOM, according to them, in the next 5 to 7 years, you will need 400 million more square feet to accommodate just the average of jobs that India will provide in tech footprint in India alone. And in 7-8 years to build 400 million, it took us 30 years to build the first 700. So you know where the landscape is.
Absolutely. On that note, finally tell us what is your outlook on this sector in the coming years, maybe in the next 5-10 years, if you can tell us.
Very optimistic, very cautious to make sure we don't make mistakes. Build the right way, build fast, build quality, build for the future customer. So keep looking into what the future customer will be, adapt fast, keep providing, keep changing, and I think the landscape is infinite.
Fantastic. And what can we expect from Raheja in the next few years?
So we're doing a lot. We're dominant players in 4 out of the 6 cities in India, which cater to 65-70% of the footprint of office space. We want to continue to be dominant in these markets, continue to have more and more grade A++ supply, along with the experience and everything else that I share with you.
Great.
So we are very focused on that vision, and we are clear, we don't get easily distracted. We know we got to build for the next phase of India. Next 5-7 years are going to be very exciting.
Great. Before I let you go, our show is called Leaders of Tomorrow, and I want to understand, what is your take on leadership? What do you think is the meaning of a leader today?
I think leader is a person who now spends a lot of time listening, gets collective advice, translates ownership into his key people for them to then carry the deliverables.
Sure.
Because no one person can carry it and deliver it. It's important that you build a talent pool along with you that understands the big picture, understands the fragments that are important, and then make sure that it delivers at any cost to ensure that nothing slips. So our primary focus is on making sure everyone understands where we want to go.
All right, great. Well, it was lovely chatting with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Vinod.
Thank you.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 12. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.